Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode number 11 of the Sim Racing in Focus podcast. We talk about sim racing on this podcast, in particular the Australian sim racing scene. I'm your host, Dean Reddit. I am the owner and editor of simracinginfocus.blog, where we have finally made a return to the blogs this week. And of course, we also produce this podcast. On tonight's show, we're going to be talking a little bit more about sim racing hardware in the industry, and he's going to be with none other than the owner of Gaming Gear Direct, Blake Sterling. Blake, welcome to the show, and how are you doing on this fine Wednesday evening?
G'day, Dean. Yeah, mate, really, really well. Thanks for having me on the show. Very much looking forward to it and getting into, talking all things sim racing.
Absolutely, and I think sim racing hardware is... Anyone that's tuning into this show will have an interest in sim racing hardware. That's where we invest most of our dollars, after all.
It certainly is, mate. Yeah, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to provide some good info for all the listeners out there on kind of what we do and how we go about it. But yeah, you're right. We obviously all, as sim racers, spend sometimes some pretty big bucks on some of that gear. Me, and I know you as well, included in that.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for it. I would be the ideal customer for anyone that's selling. I change frequently, much to a lot of my teammates' frustration. I can assure you that, because it's every other month I'm going down for a week or two while I'm waiting on something. But I just love getting out there and seeing what it's all about. And there's some just amazing stuff that's coming through, which I'm sure we'll get into as well.
Sure thing.
Yeah, so I guess tonight we want to cover off a little bit about Gaming Gear Direct itself and learn a little bit about the company and where you've sort of come from and your story. And then we'll talk a little bit more about your interactions with the sim community, and certainly where I met you in the Premier Endurance League and your involvement there, which has been really good. And a bit more of a general chat on hardware at the end. So look. Yeah, looking forward to getting into this one. Hardware is always a great topic. Everyone's always got interest, wants to know a little bit more about a product or potentially what's coming down the line. So looking forward to this one. But let's kick it off. Where did, just a general question, where did your interest with sim racing start, and sort of how long ago was that?
Oh, mate, look, I mean, the sort of sim racing interest goes back to, even before, I suppose, there was really a sim racing. I remember when I was like about 9 or 10, this is going back quite a few decades now, but my mum and dad, for Christmas one year, I got like the Sega Master System. So I think for those who are around my age will know kind of how far back we're going, like, early 90s. And they got me the Sega Master System, and the game that I got, I think it was called Outrun or something like that. It was one of the more popular sort of car racing games that were out at the time. And, mate, I just didn't put it down. I'd be up at 5, 6 in the morning playing this thing and basically wouldn't get off it until my dad, literally had to sort of turn the Sega off to kind of get me off the actual system itself. So that's kind of where the sort of obsession started with it. But it was also in conjunction with that, I was always kind of in and around the sort of modified car scene. So a couple of my cousins had pretty highly modified Tiranas, Monaros, sort of back in the day as well. So nice. Kind of that, and sort of being exposed to that as well as kind of playing these games. I think that's where that sort of this obsession with it all kind of came through, and it hasn't stopped. And then I've from sort of first playing on the sort of Sega, and I'm sure like yourself, I sort of grew up into PlayStations, and I've owned at one point like every Gran Turismo or Forza or whatever kind of car game was there. Played everything on kind of every system, and that's kind of how, again, that obsession grew into then starting my own business as well.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to the early mornings or late evenings, however you want to label it. It's actually funny. One of my earliest recollections of sim racing is, being with a good mate of mine who we went to school together. Funnily enough, when we left school, lost contact with each other over a decade. You know Jacob Hughes yourself. We've actually our mates once again off the back of iRacing. So we probably went over a decade without really, obviously stayed Facebook friends, whatever, but we would hang out through school most weekends. Remember, sun coming up, trying to grind Gran Turismo or something like that on the PlayStation. As you do, you leave school, go separate ways, and then out of nowhere, about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, he'd seen a broadcast that I was racing in, and he reached out, and then next thing you know, we're back in daily communication with each other. So it's a funny sort of world how that's all interactive. But yeah, my earliest recollections as well, being up all night till 5 a.m, sun coming up, thinking, maybe it's time to turn it off now.
Yeah, look, it's crazy, and I'm kind of the same. I've had mates that I haven't seen for a while, pop up through sort of iRacing or any sort of comps or sort of leagues I've been a part of. But yeah, the same thing. It's just that having that sort of passion, and obviously friends that are sort of like that as well. I think a lot of us have kind of gravitated towards the iRacing, or a sort of course of competition or whatever kind of leagues that we're sort of racing in with those particular titles. But I can definitely relate to that as well. Having seen a few mates sort of pop up and, hey, what are you doing? And haven't seen you for, I don't know, 5 years or 6 years or something. And it's good.
Yeah, that's good stuff. All right. Well, I guess we'll just chuck you the floor. Give us a little bit of an insight on Gaming Gear Direct itself. What services do you guys provide, and where you're located, all that type of stuff?
Yeah, okay. So Gaming Gear Direct, where we basically provide racing, flight, golf, simulation gear, as well as general sort of gaming products as well. We're starting to expand pretty aggressively, like basically as we're recording this. We've teamed up with a few really cool up-and-coming just brands, and we're sort of looking to tie up a couple of distribution deals. But basically we supply, anything in the simulation space we can basically supply. You'll find it on our website, and if there's some stuff that maybe you can't see on the website, we can probably get it. In terms of locations, we are basically online. We do have our main warehouse over in South Australia, where we sort of keep stock of a lot of our gear. And then we sort of have bits and pieces spread across a couple of different other sort of warehouses around the country. But we are basically online, so we don't have a physical sort of showroom or anything like that. And I've done that on purpose because, this business initially was well, and is still to this day a bit of a lifestyle thing for me as well. I don't want to be kind of tied to a store where, I'd rather sort of be spending that time with the family. I've got a couple of young kids who are 8 and 5, so obviously very important sort of, school age, and want to spend as much time as I can with them. So keeping the business online definitely has its benefits and definitely suits my lifestyle at the moment. That's not to say, though, that we won't have a showroom at some point, because that's definitely in the plans, but just probably right now for the next couple of years, just try and keep it all online. So yeah, mate, look, we literally supply everything, and like I said, if you can't find it on the website, we can probably get it. And we generally sort of cater to more of that sort of mid to high end clientele. And what I mean by that is the guy that sort of wants to spend a good sort of $10,000+ on a sim setup, whether it's a racing or a flight sim. But we're just now, with that expansion I was talking about earlier, starting to sort of cater to more toward that entry-level customer, because we're getting a lot more people sort of coming to us saying, hey, I see you've got these really cool racing sim bundles. I don't have, $10,000, $15,000-ish right now. I've got a couple of $1,000. What can I kind of do with it? So with that sort of growth in that sort of entry-level customer, we've decided to sort of start expanding our range to kind of cater towards that more of that entry-level person as well. And a lot of these people start out probably like yourself. I know I did it. I bought the cheapest possible rig that I could. I think my first rig and wheel, all up, it was like $400 or $500. And you just kind of build on from there. So there's a lot of people out there that sort of want to do that, and that's their starting point. And we want to be there to help those people. So that's kind of a bit of a yeah, sort of a short and fast background on kind of what we do.
Yeah, so you're positioned as a distributor. In summary, I guess, so you're a distributor selling brands, and I guess it puts you in a good position to be able to provide pretty good advice to people as well. You're covering a range of different products, not just one particular manufacturer or anything like that. So, yeah, you're right, and I imagine like just even the economical climate at the moment has probably, unfortunately, curbed our spending a little bit. Yeah, certainly don't splashed out on some of the biggest purchases that I was making. Maybe in COVID time, back before COVID times. Really, COVID times become really hard to start sourcing products. So, or even getting your hands on things. Obviously, so. So yeah, you're in a good position where you're covering off a lot of different people and their needs, aren't you? And certainly entry level guys, like you mentioned there before.
Yeah, basically. So that's what we sort of cater to. Again, we sort of more started in that sort of mid to sort of higher end kind of setups, and now it's more basically a broad spectrum that we're helping out. And yeah, you're right. We are a distributor for a number of brands. But we also have sort of reseller arrangements with brands like Track Racer, Next Level Racing, those kinds of guys. And then on the sort of distribution front, I'll reel off a couple. There's probably more than what I'm going to be talking about. But Aces Sim Sports, we're the Aussie distributor for those guys. GSI, the sort of high-end racing wheels distributor for those guys as well. Cubic Systems, so they're more of like your sort of motion simulation, gear, PT actuator, same kind of thing, and then like Moser and a couple of other different brands as well. So we've like I said, depending on the sort of relationship we have with the brand or the supplier, depends on kind of how we operate. But we cover a broad range of brands. We're not like some of the companies out there that may stick to kind of one particular brand. My thinking has always been to sort of look to cater towards, again, that broad spectrum of sort of customer, but also to have different options there because, some brands, some of them create some really, awesome sort of high-end gear and some are more on that entry-level side of things, but you want to kind of be able to have that mix of product where, again, if it's that person that's only got a couple of grand, sort of point them in the right direction because there is some really awesome entry-level stuff that's around now versus someone who may have a few more $1,000 and you can obviously point them in the direction of some sort of higher-end gear. So I've always found it important to kind of offer that, and I think we're probably one of the only companies in Australia that really has access to the amount of, particularly in the racing sim space, the amount of brands and gear and equipment that we kind of sell. Purely because, again, that's always been sort of my mission is to provide a really broad range of gear that would cater to anyone. Doesn't matter where they kind of sit, entry, high, whatever. We can help them out.
Yeah. Oh, nice one. Did it? You mentioned before how you're covering sim racing, flight simulation, golf simulation. Has Gaming Gear Direct always done that, or did it start? I guess the background of the company, did it start out covering all those fields, or did it start in one particular field and then sort of move into all these other ones as well?
Not really. So the way it kind of happened is I've been involved in e-commerce now for probably getting close to 20 years. I've sold, I've had different businesses and different companies along the way. Again, going back to that sort of passion for sort of, being around modified cars, I sold a lot of different sort of car parts back in the day. And then kind of moved into, again, my other passion sort of around gaming, etc. And Gaming Gear Direct initially started out as just like a general gaming sort of equipment supplier or gaming gear supplier. And then basically the way the website you kind of see today basically launched in November 2019.
Yep.
Just kind of, that like 12 months-ish before COVID really hit. And sort of launched that business and everything was going really, really well. And then just this overwhelming amount of people looking for racing sim gear. And again, I'd always been into sort of racing simulation. At that point, I had my own rig and everything, but constantly getting people inquiring about our racing sim range. And just that market segment was just growing at a huge rate even back then. And we decided to kind of skew into that segment. So we sort of, like I said, started with just basically general gaming stuff and then skewed into racing and flight simulation. And that's kind of like basically how the business grew from there. Obviously, COVID happened and then it just went nuts. I'm talking, in terms of just, growth, 3, 4, 500% growth. Like it just went absolutely crazy. And although it's kind of peaked out from those really high highs, it hasn't really, for us anyway, slowed down that much. We're still growing. We're still looking for new partners to kind of help out and get an entry into the Australian market. A lot of these big brands now are realising how hungry Aussies are for really good racing sim gear as well, and they're starting to sit up and take notice, because generally, I think to a lot of people, a lot of companies in Europe and America and places like that, we're kind of almost ignored. There's only 25 million of us here. We're not that big comparatively to an America or a Europe, but a lot of these businesses now are really sort of sitting up and taking notice, because we just had such a passionate sort of fan base for that kind of gear. But yeah, that's kind of where it sort of started and where it grew to. So I literally started the company from my garage. Decided I was going to sort of start this thing, called around, already had a couple of suppliers from kind of my sort of previous businesses. And then it just took off from there. It's literally like out of my garage with like 2 suppliers.
Yeah. In the beginning. Yeah. So
yeah, in the beginning. Yeah.
And we're going back just before COVID, I assume, here.
So November 2019 is when it launched, and that's kind of, when we had those first, and like I said, just before, again, I think it was like about a year, or maybe not even that long, maybe 6 months before COVID, I think. I can't remember now. But yeah, then it just, again, as soon as COVID hit, it just exploded. And fortunately for us, it hasn't really slowed down all that much. Yes, we're not, and we'll probably go into this later on, we're not sort of struggling to get gear anymore, which we were for a while, just because of the physical demand was just so great. But yeah, in terms of the growth of the business, we're still, growing month on month, and hoping that'll continue from here on in as well.
Yeah, COVID, for such a bad world event, it's certainly done some wonders for sim racing, and it's a topic that always comes up. We're 11 episodes in now. Most people have got a story around COVID as to either that's what got them into sim racing, or that's what gave them the shot in the arm to grow whatever the particular thing is that they were working on. And it sounds like it's had a good, a somewhat positive impact on Gaming Gear Direct as well.
Yeah, correct. And look, to be honest, when it first started to roll out and we were sort of first going into lockdowns, I initially thought it would be the opposite. I thought a lot of people would basically shut up shop, try and save as much money. We obviously, devastatingly so, had a lot of people losing jobs and things like that. And I actually thought this thing's probably going to fall over before I've even given it a really good shot. And it was the exact opposite, as we know, kind of how it all panned out. But yeah, it was, again, COVID was just an absolutely crazy time. And I know it was for, multiple other e-commerce businesses at the time as well. But yeah, it just seemed like every man and his dog in Australia basically was, to us anyway, was, jumping online to get some racing sim gear, because it was just a massive explosion of people buying from us.
And I guess coming into the business in that time, like, what was your what sort of, were you in Assetto Corsa? Like, give us an idea of what was your main interest at sim racing at the time in terms of sim racing titles.
Yeah, so I think I'm one of those people that kind of sort of jumps in and out of particular titles.
Yeah,
so
I'm the same. I know what you mean.
yeah,
Although I have stuck with iRacing.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So Assetto Corsa competition, I'm a massive fan of. That's probably still to this day my favourite title. iRacing, BeamMG. I think, well, and I think just as part of the business I'm in as well, that just through physically testing different gear on different rigs and stuff like that, that I think I've probably played just about every sort of popular title out there, and probably some of the not so popular ones as well. But yeah, always kind of stuck to more of that kind of GT racing, or even F1. I'm a huge F1 nerd as well, so if it's any sort of title that I can race, either like a decent sort of GT3 car, or there's some sort of formula sort of element to it. I've basically got it. I've played it, and I'm probably obsessed with it as well. So, that's kind of and I wouldn't say there's any sort of one. Again, I know I said ACC, but I don't think there's any sort of one singular title where it's like, no, that's like, that's all I kind of play. Like I really do jump from title to title depending on kind of, I don't know, what mood I'm in, or maybe who I'm sort of racing online with, or whatever it might be. So, and as well, depending on what the kids want to play, because my kids tend to jump on the rig as well and crack it. Yeah, and dictate what we're going to play. So
that's fair enough. My two boys haven't got to that age yet, but I'm quietly looking forward to when they do.
It's good. It's good.
They're still in. Well, my oldest is still in the Minecraft phase, so maybe in the next year or two. But no, I think the main reason why I ask is because I do try and cover a lot of sim racing titles on the show, but probably the most dominant one is iRacing, and you certainly know me through iRacing. But that particular time is when I think iRacing had its biggest boom as well, and we certainly seen things like the V8 Supercar E Series going to Fox Sports. Obviously the real world drivers were coming in whilst they couldn't race on track and doing it in iRacing, and then also just the best of the best within the sim itself were also getting their chance on the telly. And I just wondered whether at that particular time, whether that type of growth, whether businesses were sort of going, hang on, something's happening here within iRacing that might be interesting for us to get involved in. Did you notice anything like that going on at the time?
Yeah, look, I suppose from our side, being purely on the sort of hardware side of things, we had a lot of people coming to us, either were, and look, we've had a couple of sort of professional drivers come to us, and we're sort of saying, look, basically it's COVID, I can't do anything, I need a rig, like what can you set me up with? So we had those guys. We had a lot of people that had sort of been to a mate's house or something like that, or had sort of seen, their mates, or their mates had sort of linked them, because obviously you couldn't go to anyone's house, but, people were chatting and saying, I've just bought, I've spent this much money on a rig and this is what I'm doing. And we'd get their mate coming to us and saying, my mate's got this, and this, I want the same thing. So there was definitely that explosion in the hardware sales alongside of just the pure growth of what was happening with, like you said, like a iRacing, and you had the V8 series and everything like that. And people couldn't do anything. So, it was like, well, what am I going to sort of do with my time? And that was one of the things that a lot of people were getting into was the racing simulation, flight simulation as well. There was a lot of people that were maybe not sort of the racing fanatics like us. We had a lot of people getting into Microsoft Flight Simulator and stuff like that, and buying gear off us. So, I think just the growth. I mean, iRacing itself. I mean, it's just, it's huge. I mean, now, you look at them now. They've they've got the NASCAR license, and that's, I saw some sneak peeks on they released on Twitter of what they're doing with the design of the NASCAR series and stuff they're going to release soon. They're just going from strength to strength. I think they're probably going to snap up. I don't doubt they will snap up a few more sort of titles and licenses along the way in that sort of car racing space. So it's really good to see iRacing itself just again go from strength to strength and just grow. Compared to what it was, say, 3-4 years ago, and where it is now, it's just insane kind of what's happened to that particular title as well.
Yeah, I seen the figures not too long ago, and I'm kicking myself now, but just their growth in terms of their staff has, I think, more than doubled just as a result of COVID. It was just a really interesting time because it sort of, I guess, showcased sim racing in its best possible outlook. And with so much demand for sim racing hardware, it just made me think, we do see from time to time people getting on board or companies getting on board and sponsoring a series within iRacing or anything like that. And it's just, I'm always intrigued to know, certainly from, I know you play iRacing, but sometimes as companies, how they view, certainly like when there's a league making it to Fox Sports, whether they would want to be involved in that or, whether that be through sponsorship or whatever, or whether, because we always try and blur the lines between simulation or game and reality. So whether it's a team trying to chase sponsors or a league trying to chase sponsors, you just wonder at what point, and when that product reaches Fox Sports, you think, okay, maybe now it is legitimately something that you would sponsor or get involved in. Just those little things just play on my mind. So I don't know whether it crossed your mind in that sort of capacity at any point in time in that period.
Yeah, I think it. I know from my so talking specifically about the sort of Fox stuff and what's kind of happening there. I think a lot of companies and brands are again sitting up and taking notice about what's going on in just the esports space in general. I mean, you look at from something I'm sort of more familiar with is in Formula One. Like you've got guys, Red Bull have got guys in their team that are just sim racing guys. They're not out there on the track racing F2 and F3. They're part of their esports team. Like Ferrari's got the same. Like everyone's got an esports team now in the Formula One space. And I know there's different sort of racing titles and racing leads that have got the same kind of thing. So, like you said, it's kind of it's almost blurred now where we've seen this sort of explosion and in just racing simulation in general and the growth of it, and we've seen that then just reach out into different aspects of real life racing almost, where like I said, there's major racing teams now have their own esports divisions and stuff like that. So it's amazing to see. And it's cool to sort of see guys that have literally maybe grown up like you or I and just been really passionate about racing simulation, racing games, and all of a sudden they're either part of a professional team or there's even some guys who have crossed over and made that transition into real life racing. Like a Jimmy Broadbent's probably a good one. We all probably have heard of Jimmy Broadbent. He's now racing cars, in real life, and he's gone from that sort of YouTube channel racing, doing, iRacing instead of Corsa, every other title that he was on, to now racing his own cars. So there's also that.
Took out the 24-hour race on the weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got 20. Yeah. So
I'm not sure what class that was in, but that 24-hour series. So he wins that.
Yeah, but it's just amazing. Like there's so much opportunity in this space. I think for anyone that's passionate about racing, and that's why I just love being involved with it. I love being able to help people out and sort of match them up with the right gear. But I also just love racing simulation myself. I love jumping on the rig. I do it, every chance I've got. Obviously, nowadays, maybe not as much time as what I'd like, but, testing out new gear. We were talking before we got sort of started before, there's a brand that I can't really talk too much about now, but they've got in contact with me and have got me testing some of their gear that's going to launch pretty soon. So, doing stuff like that, I just love doing it. I just really do. So there's just so much growth, and with that, so much opportunity in this space for the people that are passionate about it.
And it's still good to see that it's continuing on, even 2 years post COVID as well. Like even myself, I sort of expected that there would be some sort of vacuum after COVID that would see, potentially businesses close or the demand just go down to a point where, it's not so lucrative anymore for business to operate in that space. But it sounds like it's still really strong.
Yeah, I think if you take the right approach, I obviously can't speak to any other company that's sort of doing what we're doing at the moment, but I know for us it definitely hasn't sort of slowed down that much. Obviously, again, that craziness has sort of petered out. But, I think also because there's also so many new brands coming to market, and obviously there's some that aren't that great, but there's a lot of really awesome brands making a lot of really awesome sim racing flight simulation gear, that's kind of buoying the sort of the demand as well, because people are, going back to what I was saying before, maybe starting out with like a really cheap sort of wheelbase and wheel right now, but when they do have that money to sort of start upgrading, there's just so many options for them now. But there's just so much great gear that I think is really keeping up with demand. People are, coming out with new stuff. I mean, we've seen, for example, SimiCube with their active pedals recently with these, basically, I don't know if you're probably aware of them or you've seen the videos of them. Where it's like,
I've seen the price tag that goes with them too.
I've seen the price tag, but just those sort of force feedback style pedals. So obviously there's other companies that will latch on to that system and release, more, hopefully, more sort of favourable price-wise options, but there's just so much innovation happening now as well.
Yeah.
And with that innovation, there's companies jumping on. I go back only like 4 or 5 years ago when literally the only brands in the space were Logitech Thrustmaster. That was kind of like your entry to mid-level point back then. And then you were jumping up to SimiCube, and that was basically it. Yeah. And now you've got SimMagic, Moza, Acertech Sim Sports, like I said before, GSI, Q Controls, obviously SimiCube's still there. Yeah, and so many other brands that I can't, rattle off fast enough. But there's just so many companies doing awesome stuff in this space right now. It's just, and I don't see it slowing down anytime soon either.
Yeah, and you just sort of, I think, tipped the conversation into a question that I sort of had as well, which was around innovation, because I've mentioned it a few times on the show before. Back when I entered into, let's say, proper sim racing, like, I was around F1 titles and things like that as early as 2010. But let's say from 2015, 16, like you just quite rightly pointed out then, you were entering in for a Logitech Thrustmaster. If you're lucky, you might go to I think it was a Fanatec V2 at the time.
Fanatec, I forgot to mention Fanatec,
which was like your top of your line belt driven or gear driven. And then you had to import SimiCube through Brett's HRS. And so you would have the import tax, everything that would go along with it. And but now just about everyone's got a direct drive option, which is just wasn't readily available.
You kind of the choice. Yeah. So I mean, everyone's got a direct drive option now. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So we've seen obviously in the last 5 years, direct drive, delivering direct drive to everyone's sort of been the main innovation, I would say, along with load cell pedals. And I'm I look at it like from someone that doesn't, know the hardware industry quite as well as someone like yourself, I sort of sit there and go, I wonder how much more innovation can occur in this space, or whether we're sort of dealing with, we've sort of flashed this industry out, but it sounds like there's still a lot more innovation that's yet to come our way.
Yeah, look, I think from a hardware perspective, I think we've kind of got the sort of main components kind of felt out a little bit. Like you said, direct drive wheelbases, obviously give you that realistic sort of force feedback. We've got hydraulic pedals coming out now that are, like as close to real life kind of race pedals as you can pretty much get. And then we've got, shifters and handbrakes and all that sort of stuff, again, modelled on real life race cars. So I think there's definitely still a lot of space for innovation, because there's always going to be that goal to make the hardware even more realistic than what's currently available.
I guess sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say, I guess motion's also been another big one, hasn't it?
Motion's a big one, and I think motion's now getting into that space where we're seeing prices drop quite significantly. You can pick up a decent, like we've got, the PT actuator Champion GT actuator system is $7,000. So one of the sort of cheaper options out there, but it's a really good quality piece of kit, and I'm not trying to basically pump that one up. I'm just saying,
you've got to give us the insight. Yeah,
of course, yeah. So like you go back again, even just a couple of years ago, that same system would have been easily triple that price. So you're talking $20,000-$30,000 for sort of something like that. That's kind of all that was out there. And we've gone from the sort of old like next level racing seat mover kits to now these really sophisticated actuator, 3 dimensions of freedom, up to even 5 and 6 dimensions of freedom. Sort of systems that are out there. And it's just crazy, again, with motion, how realistic it can be now, particularly when you've got, not just the actual actuator movement itself, but then sort of, adding on, your drift sort of motion system and being able to, basically it's replicating rear slip on the car and stuff like that. So it's just so realistic now. It's like I said, I think there's still definitely more innovation to come, but even I look at it like, I've tested out a few motion systems and we obviously sell that sort of stuff as well. I get out of these rigs and I just go, that's just crazy realistic. Like that's just insanely realistic now. It's what's sort of possible.
Yeah, and it's just so like motion, something I haven't delved into myself just yet. But usually when you hear people real world racers talk about sim racing, it was always, it's good through your feedback you get through your wheel, and even the pedals these days are really good, but they can never replicate. They call it the feeling in the seam of your pants, or and now it's like someone's just gone, all right, well, I see what you're saying there, and now I'm going to actually take that challenge on, and we've got these slip angles going on in the seat, which is all just, I suppose, aimed at the people that say you can't replicate that real feeling of through the seam of your pants, which is where you'd get most of your feedback in a real world car, apparently.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, with the combination of, we've just talked about direct drive wheels, hydraulic pedals, motion systems, like actuator based motion systems, you've got belt tensioners, you've got all the rumble kits and stuff like that, the butt kickers and stuff like that. So once you kind of combine all that gear, it's just so bloody realistic. And I know it's not like, like some people listening to just sort of roll their eyes and say, it's not anything like a real car, but it's, when you get it tuned in right and you've got the right gear, it's as bloody close as you can get. It really is.
Yeah, and if it didn't do a good job of replicating it, you wouldn't see the real world drivers stick with it as much as what they have. and spend
correct.
invest as much time on it as what they have. It's providing some benefit to most guys nowadays. It's only really a harder race, but even like Fernando Alonso, who's like, oh, I don't know, he's getting up there in age, but he's got his own sim racing team as well. So, So even he's seen benefit in it. So it's just, it's an interest, being talking to someone like yourself who's got obviously, your networking there and seeing what's coming down the pipeline and hearing about all that sort of stuff. It's good to know that there's plenty more. There's going to be a lot of new innovative stuff coming out in the not too distant future, and I'm sure even maybe further down the track from that. So that's exciting to hear about.
Definitely.
Well, here you go. Oh, join me in dream world here for one for 1 second. Yep. I guess, firstly, owning your own company now, do you have a lot of contact with other hardware, companies in Australia? Thinking, there's Racecraft, obviously Simrees, there's other guys. Is there sort of like a bit of industry communication going on, or are you finding yourself not?
There's bits and pieces. I don't think we're and not out of any sort of issues or anything like that. I just think I think we tend to kind of just stick to what we're doing. And again, I'm speaking for myself here. I'm not speaking for anyone else. I know we don't have a lot of contacts with other sort of companies like your Racecrafts or anything like that. But I mean, by all means, I know of these people, and I know who kind of runs which company and sort of stuff like that. But I know, as an example, we've got a really good working relationship with Matt from Track Racer. Matt's obviously the owner of Track Racer, Matt Sten. So I've been working with him for a number of years now, basically since day one of Gaming Gear Direct. He was one of the sort of first suppliers that really helped us out. The guys from sort of Pagnan, Next Level Racing, know those guys quite well. So anyone that's kind of is one of those brands, one of those hardware suppliers that we work with, and generally I know those kinds of guys in Australia. We've been working with them for 4, 5, 6 years. So definitely some of them out there we know quite well. Others who are maybe sort of in the same. There's probably a few that we don't have that much contact with, purely because we don't do business with them. So you mentioned sort of Racecraft and Simrigs and HRS before. We don't really have any dealings with those guys, so we don't really sort of communicate with them in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, for the hardware suppliers out there that we do deal with on a daily basis, we've got really good working relations with them. We're always in constant contact. We're always talking about the sort of goings on in the sort of sim racing space and what's coming up and what's going on. And, I might get a call from Matt because he's going to release a brand new product and maybe wants us to have a look at it for him and stuff like that. So there's definitely that collaboration there between different companies, which I think is good because it's not everyone's kind of, keeping secrets and trying to do their own thing. There is definitely a lot of collaboration out there between certain companies for sure.
Yeah, and I guess the reason why I ask, and this is why I said before, join me in dream world. Do you think there would ever be now that COVID's out of the way, do you think that there ever could be like an industry trade show in Australia? So, like America that has Sim Racing Expo. I know we have PAX, which has like a little I haven't been before, but let me just see if I've got this right in saying it's got a sim racing arm or section. But I'm thinking,
I think there's like a couple of booths or something like that. Because I've been to PAX before and sort of seen bits and pieces. I don't see why not. They do it. There's heaps of sim expos in Europe. There's, as you mentioned, there's heaps in America. I don't see why we couldn't have one in Australia at all. It just means we're going to have to bring out the brands that kind of want to be out here, get them out here. It's definitely something that a couple of the companies that we work with have openly discussed in terms of what kind of opportunities are there. And I've said just like I think it could be a pretty big deal. So if you can if you can justify it cost wise, and definitely come down, because I think it could be a pretty big deal for some of those brands. So yeah, to be honest, I'm surprised it hasn't really happened yet. I think that's kind of, we're certainly at that stage where maybe that should be happening. Again, I just look at Europe, I look at America. I know, again, population, obviously it's huge over there, but I definitely think we've got the demand for something like that here. So I think it's a great idea to have something like that for sure.
Yeah, because obviously hardware would play a big role in that, and then, but you also could have a particular esport event on at the same time in the same facility. Like, just thinking about how you could bring it all together, tie it all together.
Yeah, logistically, yeah.
We're going full pipe dream here, cost aside, anything like that, because it just seems to like that would be, I would sign up for that day one. But I'm just one person. Yeah, and I'm coming at it from a consumer, and you would have invested business interest. But I just think to myself, geez, it's something that works so well elsewhere.
Yeah, I think the combination of some kind of esports event with that, and I know there's a couple of things kind of happening. Like, I know I was at Bathurst last year. There was a couple of guys kind of down near the track, where they're sort of like, they've got all the, I don't know if you've been to Bathurst before, but they've got all the different sort of stands and sort of products, and all the different sort of teams selling their T-shirts and stuff like that. But there was a couple of booths there with guys with really outdated, like old school, 15 years old racing sims, charging people a fortune to jump on there and race a V8 car, I think in like a Assetto Corsa or something like that around a track. But yeah, I think something like that, either it's like an esports event or like a major racing event, maybe a combination where we could have like a major kind of sim racing expo as part of one of those events, I think would be a really good idea. And I think it's more than possible.
Yeah, that would be, I think, one of the coolest things from a networking point of view that I think you could do, or anyone or someone that's got, a little bit more know-how than me, that's for sure. But just, because we often hear from, on my side of the fence, you hear about certainly a lot of drivers, racers that are doing, whether it be the V8 supercar and iRacing at the highest level, talking about often meeting up and building good relationships with fellow drivers that you wouldn't normally get, because at the end of the night, if we're just doing sim racing, we're just names on a screen. And yeah, whether, I know we've had a couple of guys that have been prominent in certainly the iRacing community. Simon Firewall with Altus Esports, Brendan O'Brien is tied up with Logitech G Pro Invitae. Like, these guys are the guys that would have the capability to maybe spark this sort of conversation happening at a higher level, where you could bring interest from a hardware point of view. You can bring obviously the races to an event, and it would be something that just, like once again, maybe it isn't dream world, maybe it is a reality that we could get something like that happening. But I would be rustling, certainly all the guys, within my team, come on, we need to get down here. We've known each other now for 6 years, but I've only met one or two of you face to face. Let's get around an event like this and actually go on and attend it. So
yeah, look, I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. Like, I think it's one of those events, yourself, me, and there's obviously, thousands of other people within the community that would be, keen as to get to something like that. So I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. I know, as an example, the Time Attack event happening up in Sydney pretty soon. One of the brands that we work with was looking to maybe kind of sponsor that event and get like a stand happening there. So like I said, I think it's probably going to start like that. It'll start small, and then it'll eventually be something like or similar to like an expo type thing, where a lot more brands will kind of show up. But I think it just takes one or two sort of brands or companies to kind of show interest and then get there and then prove the model. And by that I mean, obviously get a lot of people around them and a lot of interest there. And I think once that kind of happens, it won't be long before we have some kind of full scale kind of expo happening.
Yeah. No, it's something I've often considered or thought about, dreamed about. I've even heard of people buying tickets to the international ones and going over, tying that into a holiday or whatever. And
I'm probably, I mean, I know me personally, I'm looking to go over to a couple in Europe next year. Didn't really have time this year. I wanted to go to a couple, but just with my schedule, just didn't really work out. But next year, I've already been invited by Acertech Sim Sports to one of their events, or not their event, but an expo happening over in Europe. I think mid next year that they're going to be attending, so I'll probably be going over to go and have a look at that. And I don't doubt that there'll be one or two more that kind of pop up from a couple of different brands that hopefully I can get to as well. But I know of a couple of guys that have done the same thing, gone, basically, these huge expos that they have over there, they've spent a bit of money on a ticket and gone over there and reckon it's just unreal. You can literally go and try every bit of gear that some of these brands have got. Some of the stuff they're showcasing there hasn't been released to the public yet. Is not an actual product that they've got on their website, so it's not in production yet, but you can test out all this new gear that they're sort of coming out with. So something like that. I really want to go and check it out. And,
it'd be awesome. It'd be so cool.
It'd be unreal. Yeah,
I'd hesitate to say that there's the guys that are planning their holiday specifically, but I wouldn't put it past them to go over there specifically for that reason. But it's one of those. I think I was listening to another podcast. A guy was planning a holiday that just happened to be around when the Monza Grand Prix was on. Something like that. I was just planning a holiday to Europe. It just so happens that Sim Expo's on at the same time. But just pure coincidence that happened.
That's something I'll be doing as well. Actually, I'll be trying to plan it around some kind of Grand Prix or two. I'll stay over there for a week or two and try and get a couple of Grand Prix in for sure.
Yeah. So it's good to hear that it has been mentioned. It's something that, I think has the potential to explode and be a good annual event. And again, just further, I guess, almost just solidify industry, whether it's, like I said before, retailers or consumers or racers or whatever you want to call it. It would be such a cool idea. But okay, well, what about moving forward? Also, if you want to stay just in the hypothetical here, you can, or if you've got things down the line that you can tell us, what sort of plans do you have for Gamer Gear Direct moving forward? Have you got something as official as business plans, or is it just something that, like you said before, it allows you to have family time, and you're quite happy with how it's bubbling away at the moment?
Yeah, look, we'll continue to grow Gaming Gear Direct. I think, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, we'll definitely at some point in the next few years have, our own showroom or warehouse or whatever it might be. But just in sort of general sort of terms, in terms of what's coming up for us, again, we've got plans to kind of lean more into general gaming sort of gear now, purely because we always, the team and I always look at kind of what our market wants and what our customers are asking for, and we don't really move into a category without really knowing that there's going to be that demand there. So we're sort of leaning into a bit more sort of general sort of gaming gear as well. So what I mean by that is, consoles, controllers, everything that sort of relates to consoles. We've got a lot more people asking for console-related sims. As we know, PC's dominated for a long time, although consoles always kind of had that that racing simulation element there. I think it's only just recently that it's really become prominent to the point, where I think we could all say that consoles do have decent racing sims, as compared to a sort of Corsa or iRacing, whatever it might be. So we do have a lot more people now sort of getting into that console space and just want that. I think it's also the ease of use as well, because people, a console, it's generally just plug and play, whereas a PC can be a little bit more complicated than that.
It also just didn't offer the support I found
And
for the hardware for a
and
long
that's what I was going to say as well. The sort of support side of things was never really there, and it kind of is now. And there's a lot more brands that are looking to jump on the console bandwagon. Obviously, a lot of people listening to this may have already seen the Moser with their R3 bundle that's coming out soon, which is a Xbox compatible direct drive wheelbase. Obviously, we've had Fanatec for a long time as well, and then sort of Thrustmaster, Logitech, etc. as well. But there will be more brands, I think. Again, going back to what we're talking about with that innovation side of things, I think a lot more brands will migrate over to consoles, or at least have a console offering of some sort. So, like I said, Moser's got their wheel bundle coming out in the next couple of months, I think it is, for sort of Xbox. So we're sort of going more in that direction because, again, our market's asking for it. But we're also still really going strong on moving into more high-end gear. So as I was saying before, one of the brands, Cubic System, make really high-end motion systems. They're the guys that are responsible for all the next-level racing motion systems. So those guys are behind the seat mover, the traction loss platform. They also make some really high-end actuator motion-based platforms. So we're dealing with those guys at the moment and sort of talking to them about what our market is asking for and supplying their systems as well. And they're seeing some really huge demand for their gear that's traditionally been kind of, I suppose, outside the kind of a lot of people in terms of affordability. But again, prices are coming down. So these guys are sort of getting a lot more demand. So working with those guys, and we're talking to a couple of different aftermarket kind of high-end wheel suppliers.
Well, GSI would probably fit, but that's Gomez Sim Industries, is it not? Or is
Gomez Sim Industries. So we've been working really closely with those guys for a while now. They're our primary kind of high-end wheel supplier. They've got a lot of really exciting stuff coming out. I can't talk about anything on the podcast, unfortunately, but they've got a lot of stuff happening like over the next 12 months. Keep an eye on GSI. There's a lot of stuff coming out from those guys. Same with Acertech Sim Sports. They're really, I think, they kind of hit the market a couple of years ago with their pedals, which have done really well. The hydraulic pedals, the Invicta pedals, have done really well. Just the realism from those guys, because the guy that owns the company is like a race car driver, has his own crazy GT. I don't even know what it is actually. It's like some crazy GT3 car that he races, but he's come from that kind of background, and he also owns like traditionally Acertech with like a PC cooling. They supply like cooling parts and stuff like that. And have obviously moved into the racing simulation space. So we've had a company like that where they've got that racing background come into the racing simulation space and just launch some, incredible products, in the same quality sort of ballpark as a SimiCube. But now, with some recent sort of pricing updates, pricing's much lower. So, their Invicta wheelbase, what's that, like 27 newton meters, direct drive, like probably the best wheelbase I've ever used. And I've used SimiCube, I've been through everything. You can get that for a couple of grand now. Again, you go back a couple of years ago, something like that would have been triple the price. So there's a lot of stuff happening with those guys too, where they're just releasing, they're going to have, and again, I probably can't say too much, but they're going to have a ton of stuff coming out over the next 12 months that I think is going to it's going to sort of shock a lot of people about what these guys are actually up to and what they're capable of. Mate, again, it's kind of working in those two sort of spaces. It's catering more to that entry level, the guy who just wants to jump on his PlayStation on the weekend and just have a crack at Gran Turismo, to the guy that is, maybe a semi-professional race driver who wants like the best of the best to be able to give him that edge on the track. we're almost pushing the boundaries on both ends of the market at the moment, and sort of growing from there.
Yeah, it's good to hear that. Like I said, I've mentioned a couple of times, it's good to hear that there's this growth continuing on, even now that we're so far removed from, we're a couple of years removed from COVID, and these guys are pushing the boundaries. And I've certainly looked at brands like Gomez and just thought, I would love to have a go at one of these. Like, they just look, we're almost talking 1-to-1 scales with real world rims here, aren't we? Like, they're usually modelled off something and come with this.
Yeah, like GSI in particular, the quality of their wheels is just insane. The look, the feel, the quality, like you said, it's basically 1-to-1 now. Like, like you really just can't fault anything on a wheel like that. Obviously, you're paying for it, but it's just like I don't have one with me right now. I've sold some of the Deno models off, but yeah, just opening up the boxes of like they recently released their new Formula Pro Elite, and just seeing that for the first time, I'm just like, far out. This is it's just so lifelike. I look at it and I'm just shocked. I'm just like the detail that goes into something like that and producing something like that is just insane. And again, I know it's we're talking about a couple of $1,000s here, but even that, I just look at it and go, I know it's expensive, but it seems like it should be a lot more expensive than what it is.
It's also it's also that, given the amount of boxes that I'm sure you've opened, that you can still get that unboxing feeling for the first time when you see it and you just get blown away by it.
And again, that's why I love it. I love the industry because that constantly happens where like I'll get something, or we'll start working with a new brand and obviously get some samples in and whatever it might be. And I just open up and go, far out. Like, this is just so good. And like, I'm like a kid at Christmas. I just can't wait to get it on the rig and test it out and give it a go. But yeah, like again, mate, to this day, I'm still so surprised by some of the stuff these companies are manufacturing and the boundaries they're pushing on some of this stuff to make it as lifelike as possible. It still blows my mind to this day with everything that we've sort of seen so far. I still get the goosebumps when a new box rolls into the front door and I open it up and just give it a bit of a test. So it's awesome.
That's so cool. One of the other things I wanted to ask you about now is a little bit more, I guess, how we met. And that's your involvement that you've had with the sim community, and certainly from my point of view, that was through the Premier Endurance League. What's it been like from your point of view interacting? I mean, you're quite active in there and talking to guys, and it kind of just, for me, it just blurs the line between business and consumer really nicely. I just thought it was something that I haven't seen too much of. I'm sure it's occurring elsewhere, but how's dealing with the community in that way been? Because I know we can be. I'm not going to make you put a label on it. I'll put the label on it. We can certainly be demanding at times.
Yeah. You might have to beat that one out, but no. Look, I think I've always been a big advocate in all the businesses that I've been part of, is that you go to where your market hangs out, and obviously my market hangs out in these sim racing communities. So just been fortunate of kind of working with a couple of different leagues. You mentioned it before. We're the major sponsor of the Premier Endurance League, and just sort of going there and talking to guys. For one, it gives us ideas on where we can improve, because I think when you're part of the community like that, and I've always asked people to be honest with us in terms of what their experience is like with our business, and if there's any issues or problems or suggestions, let us know. And obviously there's people that will sort of refrain from doing that, but there's other people that will have no qualms about telling us exactly what we should be doing better, or their what a particular features on a product they think a brand should add and stuff like that. So overall, it's been a really positive experience. Just getting in there amongst it, and yeah, like you said, we're pretty active there. Talking to guys. We've even helped out different members with problems to help them solve a problem. Sorry, for products that we don't even sell, but it's just like being part of that community and sort of helping out as sort of best we can, helping some of those sort of steer those people in the right direction in terms of maybe some of the equipment they're looking to purchase. I know some people will always sort of take that. Take the sort of route of us trying to sort of just pump up our own gear, but genuinely, I know from my perspective, I'm just sort of there to sort of help out. If you don't want to buy any gear off me, that's totally fine. But if there's something else that I can help you out with, as you know, Fanatec's direct to sort of public. There's no distributors for that particular brand, but I've pointed people in that direction and said, look, if you can't sort of afford to get this or this, or if you don't like the look of, this particular wheelbase or whatever the problem or the issue might sort of be, then have a look at Fanatec gear. So I've always been adamant about sort of helping people, and it doesn't necessarily lead to a transaction with my company or sort of money in our pocket, but if it's helping someone out and pointing them in the right direction, then that just feeds back. You know what I mean? Like, I think if you help someone else out and they're appreciative of that, they're going to tell 10 people how you helped them out. And I'm sure out of one of those 10 people, maybe more, will come back to us and potentially purchase something from Game Gear Direct. So I'm just there to sort of help out. We push our product from time to time. Any sort of normal marketing activation that we're okay to do on those sort of leagues and through those channels. Yeah, of course we do that. But yeah, more often than not, we're there to sort of help and provide advice to those people that are looking for it.
Well, I think the one thing that works really well is, like, I think, past experiences when a company comes into a Discord or whatever the social thing might be, and they're there with the specific intent to plug a product, whether that be once a week or whatever, or whatever the limit might be on them, and that's their only agenda, is when I sort of think that actually, okay, and this is my opinion, and not controversial, but that segregates me. But when someone comes in and you know that there's going to be advertisement occurring, but then that post is one of maybe 20 or 30 general posts that person, whether it be a manufacturer or business such as yourself, is making, and there's other 29 posts, interactions either around helping people or whether it just be a new product gets released and everyone's discussing it and that person joins into that chat, then that's what brings everyone closer together. And that's when you go, I know Blake sells that product, and we had that good interaction, and by all means, like, that's how it works for me, because it feels like anytime that I think someone joins in from a manufacturing or a distribution side of things, shows interest in everything that we're doing as well as racers, as well as, there to obviously hook people up with their own, like that's how it should work. That's just the perfect, I guess, the whole point of a community. So, like, that's when it works well. And that's why I think, the way it's done through Premier Endurance League, it works well. It just works well. So, and I think we just, and I'm just going here, just labeling myself as a general driver or whatever. Anytime you get that interaction with businesses, it makes you feel like what you're doing, or we invest time and money into, probably more time and money than we want to share with wives and partners or whatever, into what we're doing, and it just makes you feel like, this is really cool, because it's all worthwhile now because we're networking with people in the industry and all that sort of stuff. So that's just I share that opinion with you and everyone else that wants to tune in and listen. But and it's obviously not super painful for you at the same time.
No, that's right. And I 100% agree. I think as a business owner nowadays, in a space where you're part of a passionate hobby and I say hobby, in inverted commas, because I don't see it as like necessarily a hobby, but it's a passion of a lot of people. I think you to be honest, I think you'd have to be an idiot to kind of come into something like that with a Discord or any other sort of social media channel where you're just trying to plug your own gear without giving back to that same community.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what you mean, because I see a lot of companies doing it, without any sort of interaction or feedback, or again helping out that community. I think that's a really dumb move, because people can see through it, and I mean, people aren't stupid. I mean, nowadays again, you're kind of sport for choice on a lot of stuff. We're not the only sim racing sort of hardware company out there. So I think just being helpful, helping people out when they're asking questions, and being there as part of the community, supporting that community, is definitely the way to go. And like I said, I don't mind, if it might be weeks or months between someone directly from that community purchasing something from us, but I know that if we're in there and that we're sort of helping, that at some point over time that's going to happen. So I don't really worry about that. That's not my intention. My intention is and that of my team is to primarily help the people within that community.
Yeah, nice. All right. Well, let's just finish with. We'll finish up on just I guess, an enjoyable question. I think you thought we would struggle to go for an hour, but we're well over that now. Is there a particular product out there that you look at and you think, I wouldn't mind getting my hands on that, or distributing that, or whatever it might be, that something that's catching your eye out there at the moment? I haven't really been over the hardware market the last couple of months, but we talked about the active pedals that have been released, and these are sort of like big ticket items for people that, hey, that would be nice if we could afford that. But is there anything out there like that you think, wow, that is something I either want to have in my business or for my own personal rig?
Yeah, look, probably the one thing that comes to mind at the moment, and some people listening to the podcast will know what I'm talking about, and that's Will Ford recently he's done one of his most recent reviews. He's done a couple now on the Cubic System VS20 racing simulator. So it's like a full motion sort of setup rig built by Cubic System. So it's not just the actuators; it's like the full rig as well. I want one of those. So if you haven't already, check it out. Check the videos out. I think off the top of my head, retail Australian dollars, it'd have to be about 30K, I think, from memory. And look, and now that we deal with these guys, we can actually bring them in. So I might have one sooner rather than later. But if you have a look at those videos, as soon as I saw it, I'm like, yeah, that's the dream. Now, trying to get, like you just mentioned before as well, with the wives and partners getting some of this, trying to get that kind of purchase past my wife is going to be a big task. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but yeah.
Have you ever used the business as an excuse to buy something? You said, look, I've got to buy this product for myself because I need it for R&D, even though you probably never know you're going to get it.
No, I just say, I need to buy this because I need to test it out. So, and then, like 4 or 5 big boxes will show up at the door, and my wife will turn around and go, "What the hell is going on?" But yeah, and house. Yeah, and the garage and the spare room are literally full of rigs. So yeah. So I've been banned for a little while. I've kind of been put on notice that I can't get anything else for a little while. So I'm going to have to start selling off some gear, I think, to make room for some new stuff that I want.
Or just back in dreamland, when the company's big enough that you can have your own warehouse, you can start storing all these things fully set up in places like that. But then you'll never be at home.
Right. Exactly right.
All right, mate. Well, Blake, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the podcast, mate. Massive, thanks to yourself for giving up your time this evening. And mate, if there's anyone that you'd want to give a shout out to, it's helped you along the way, mate, go by all means, go for it right now.
Yeah, mate, and obviously thank yourself for inviting me on. It's been a great chat. Like you said, I didn't think we'd get past an hour, but I'm looking at my clock now, and we've done about an hour and 15 based on what I'm looking at here. So, it's been a really enjoyable chat, obviously chatting about the business. In terms of shout-outs, definitely shout out to the Premier Endurance guys. I know that there's a couple of guys that will be sort of keenly listening to this episode and would want me to push a shout out there. So I've got to make sure I put that one in. And mate, that's probably about it. That's probably the only one I have to really be sort of careful of. But again, mate, just thank you for inviting me on, and thank you also for putting in the effort to put together this podcast. I know that doing a show like this obviously takes a lot of effort, and potentially without that much reward at the end of the day as well. So yeah, just sort of thank you for putting in the effort to put something like this together for our community as well.
Cheers, mate. And at the end of the day, I think for me, it's I love networking and certainly hearing about people's stories, and that's enough energy for me at this particular point in time to keep me sort of coming back each week. So it's really cool to get to talk to people such as yourself in a different state, and I look forward to meeting you at a upcoming Sim Racing Expo.
Of course.
All right, mate. Once again, appreciate you coming on, and it'll be bye for now.
No worries. Thanks, Dean.
And that is going to do it for tonight's episode of the Sim Racing in Focus podcast. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Blake Sterling from Gamer Gear Direct. Blake's involvement with the community in sim racing is growing every month, it seems, and it's nice to hear that his company's doing well, and he's obviously provided some nice insights into the sim racing hardware market here in Australia. So hopefully you all enjoyed that conversation. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the Sim Racing in Focus podcast. You can do that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or now on YouTube as well. Head over there, give us a like and a follow. Leave a comment. Certainly trying to keep an eye out for comments and getting a chance to hear about how the show's doing and what your thoughts, feedbacks are, potential guests, any topics you like covered. Go right ahead and leave a comment there in any of those comment sections, and I'll do my best to pick it up and hopefully put it into the show or respond to you in kind. Also, head over to our Facebook page where you can like and follow us there to receive the notifications when these podcasts go live. You can also follow us on Instagram. It's been very quiet on Instagram recently, but hopefully be some new content coming out there soon. Every week we're just trying to plug away and add something new that hopefully improves the show or the content on the social platform, and we keep moving this thing forward. So of course, we'd like to give a big thanks to Camus for sponsoring the show. You can find our first blog on the Camus C5 Direct Drive Wheelbase now on the simracinginfocus.blog website. It's also posted to socials as well, so consider going on and having a read of the content. Anytime you guys can jump on and have a read of the content, it's helping us out, whether it's that particular article or anything else, and hopefully we will see some more articles coming to the website. If you do like what you see with the Chemist C5 products, Chemists have been kind enough to provide the simracinginfocus.blog with a discount link for you to use. By clicking on the link that's either contained in the show notes at the end of this episode or in the blog itself, you'll be entitled to a 5% off discount on your purchase when using SimFocus in the checkout box. With all that being said, we'd just like to thank Camus once again for providing ongoing support with the show and the blog site, and we look forward to working with them moving forward. That's going to do it for this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show once again, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.